USS Dominant at M-431. USS Dominant MS-431 was an Agile-class minesweeper built for the United States Navy. The second ship to be named Dominant by the Navy was launched as a MS-431 on the 5th of November 1953 by C. Hildebrand Dry Dock Company, Kingston, New York, sponsored by Mrs. Belle S. Hildebrand, and commissioned on the 8th November 1954, Lieutenant Samuel F. McMurray in command. European deployments. After shakedown training out of Key West, Florida, during which time the Ocean Minesweepers designation was changed to MS-431 on the 7th of February 1955, Dominant reported to her home port, Charleston, South Carolina, on the 10th of November 1955 for duty with Mine Force Atlantic. Assigned to Mine Division 43, the minesweeper spent the next 4 years conducting deployments to Europe for operations and exercises with North Atlantic Treaty Organization NATO navies, providing services for the Mine Defense Laboratory in Panama City, Florida, and supporting amphibious and other fleet exercises off the East Coast and in the West Indies. Dominant first deployed to Europe soon after arriving at Charleston for January 11–June 1956, and followed that a Mediterranean deployment the next year 1 May–2 October 1957, a Northern European deployment that included a cruise to Danish and German ports in the Baltic Sea 12 May–30 September 1958, another Mediterranean, providing services for BUSHIPS. After her shift to the Norfolk, Virginia area, Dominant reported to Commander, Operational Test, and Evaluation Force to provide towing, recovery, and other services for Bureau of Ships projects. These duties were again interspersed with deployments, including the West Indies 23 January–4 May 1961, 30 October 1961, 17 January 1962, 17 June 25 September 1964, 4 October 16 December 1965, the Mediterranean. Cuban Missile Crisis 22–26 October 1962, while attached to Mine Div 43, the Dominant, along with Dash, Direct, and Detector were assigned to the Caribbean to patrol the Windward Passage in search and boarding of Russian ships 12 February 1963, 7 February–July 16, 1965, as well as the minesweeper also provided contingency services for the National Aeronautics and Space Administration (NASA) off Bermuda in April 1963. Dominant continued the same pattern of activities through the end of the decade, with one more Mediterranean deployment 3 November 1966, 14 May 1967, an exercise with Colombian and Venezuelan naval forces 9 May–10 June 1968, an additional NATO exercise off Halifax, Nova Scotia exercise Silver Tower 9. Following her refit, Dominant was homeported in Charleston, SC, along with her entire squadron, the other D ships from there. They departed for another European cruise, port hopping via Halifax, Nova Scotia, and St. John's, Newfoundland for topping off. She and her squadron sailed unescorted to Campbelltown, Scotland. She carried insufficient fuel in her tanks for the crossing, so a 2,500-gallon fuel bladder was installed on her fantail. The squadron made it with fuel to spare. This was reported to have made U.S. naval history, an MSO crossing the Atlantic unescorted. The cruise continued to Denmark, where the squadron was engaged in Operation Love Song, a NATO exercise, and then on to Germany, Holland, Belgium, France, Spain, and into the Mediterranean. They continued in the Med for several months, with a maintenance stop in Naples. The squadron recrossed the Atlantic, sailing from the Straits of Gibraltar to Charleston in company with a destroyer tender which had completed her assignment in Naples. Dominant and the D Squadron arrived in Charleston in early spring of 1971 and was rumored to be taken out of service soon. Assigned as Naval Reserve training ship. After the minesweeper shifted to the newly reorganized Mine Division 23 in April 1971, Dominant changed status again to become a U.S. Naval Reserve training in RT ship on the 1st of July 1971, joining Mine Squadron 12 with 3 other minesweepers that same day. Her designation was later changed to a Naval Reserve Force NRF ship. The minesweeper also changed home port to St. Petersburg, Florida, on the 20th of August and began training her complement of reserve crews, 1 weekend a month and for 2 weeks of annual training. Although reserve training duties generally kept the minesweeper in Florida waters, Dominant occasionally sailed to South Carolina or Virginia for overhaul or for minesweeping exercises and periodically conducted search and rescue sweeps for crashed aircraft or lost helicopters. Home port shift to Perth Amboy. On the 1st of July 1977, Dominant shifted home port again to Perth Amboy, New Jersey, where her crew conducted a cross-deck transfer with minesweeper USS Exultant MS Ominous 441. The minesweeper operated out of Perth Amboy for the next 5 years, training local reserve crews and periodically conducting exercises up and down the East Coast ranging from Rhode Island to South Carolina. During one cruise in June 1979, Dominant assisted stricken yacht that boat south of Shinnecock Inlet, Long Island, providing aid to the sinking vessel until the U.S. Coast Guard arrived on the scene. Encounter with a Cuban gunboat. Her next significant deployment took place in early June 1980, when the minesweeper sailed to the Straits of Florida, whose waters were flooded with Cuban refugees. During her week-long stay 5/11 June, Dominant rescued refugees from several overcrowded and sinking small craft. At one point, the minesweeper was challenged by a Cuban gunboat, which demanded the return of a specific refugee, but Dominant refused the demand. Decommissioning. Commissioning. The minesweeper made one more West Indies deployment to June July before commencing deactivation procedures. Dominant decommissioned at Charleston on the 1st of October 1982 and was struck from the Navy list that same day. She was then sold for scrap to Wayne Hobbs of Huntington Beach, California, on the 7th of December 1983.